Coming to you live from the Fillmore, New Orleans, it's the 2020 Greater New Orleans Foundation Celebration of Black Philanthropy. And now, your host for this evening, Tyrone Walker.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Tyrone Walker, Vice President of Communications and Public Affairs, and I will serve as your MC this evening. Welcome to the Fillmore. We're excited to host you for this evening's Celebration of Black Philanthropy. Thanks to the genius of the Pan-African Women's Philanthropy Network for starting this celebration. In the month of August each year, time is set aside to inform, involve, inspire, and invest in Black philanthropic leadership and strengthen African American and African descent giving. Due to Tropical Storm Marco and Hurricane Laura, we had to move this year's celebration to the month of September. While we were spared from Hurricane Laura's wrath and destruction, this evening, we would like to keep the Lake Charles community in our prayers for the devastation caused there. Here at the Greater New Orleans Foundation, we wanted to make sure that we continued our tradition of setting time aside for the third year in a row to recognize and applaud the vast philanthropic efforts that has taken place in this city and region by Black philanthropists. So we're excited that you've turned in and tuned in to share with us for this virtual experience. So without further delay, please help me welcome the President and CEO of the Greater New Orleans Foundation, Andy Copeland.
Thank you, Tyrone, and thanks to all of you for joining us this evening. I'm excited about tonight's program, but before we do anything else, I would like to first recognize and thank the board and staff of the Greater New Orleans Foundation for all you do on behalf of the people of our region, especially this year. Thank you. This April, we lost a giant in the New Orleans community, an icon to musicians across the country and around the globe, a gentle man, and a teacher whose musical protégés included his own children and so many, many more who he's inspired and mentored. A longtime fund holder and philanthropist with the Greater New Orleans Foundation, and the man who stole the show with his kindness and charm at last year's Celebration of Black Philanthropy. Ellis Marsalis displayed something those of us who work in philanthropy get to see every day: African Americans giving generously to causes that spark their passion. The famous jazz musician's legacy will live forever through the songs that we know by heart, and his impact will be felt for generations through the Ellis Marsalis Center for Music that began in 2011. The center creates opportunities for underserved children and youth and musicians to get the support they need through teaching and mentorship. Ellis loved the Ellis Marsalis Center. Being there with the young musicians always gave him great joy. His legacy will live on in their horns, their drums, their voices, and yes, their pianos, being played by the musicians who passed through those doors. We lost Ellis due to the COVID-19 virus, which has disproportionately impacted too many African Americans here in our region and across the country. The disparate racial impacts of COVID-19 we have seen are unacceptable. They're intolerable. That's why the Greater New Orleans Foundation has made hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of grants to organizations on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic, working to eliminate the racial disparities in testing, treatment, healthcare, access, and outcomes. We've lost Ellis, but we will never forget him and the magic he created. We are so very proud to dedicate this year's Celebration of Black Philanthropy to the memory of this New Orleans legend and exemplary Black philanthropist, Mr. Ellis Marsalis. Tonight is our night to celebrate all forms of Black philanthropy and to raise up issues important to Black philanthropists. Black lives matter, and Black philanthropists matter too. We are thrilled to honor and recognize New Orleans Pelicans star Drew Holiday and his wife Lauren for their incredible generosity this NBA season. They've chosen to invest Drew's earnings to address racial injustice and the needs of Black communities, which have always been present, but which have been brought to the forefront in 2020 by the COVID-19 pandemic, the killing of Black Americans by law enforcement and vigilantes, and by the work of the Black Lives Matter movement's marches for racial justice. Drew and Lauren's principled and generous giving is an example of the increasing leadership we see among our nation's most celebrated athletes. It is noteworthy because of the significance of their contributions and their courage and outspokenness as public figures. But it is part of a long, vibrant, and strong tradition of giving in the Black community. Black giving has always been robust, but is largely done at grassroots levels in church and civic organizations. Last year, I noted that Black New Orleanians give an extraordinary 25% of their income to charity, to helping others, every year. New Orleans has an amazing legacy of African American philanthropy we want to recognize, encourage, and support. So whether it is here as a fund holder at the Greater New Orleans Foundation, as a regular tither at your church, or as a consistent contributor to the causes of your sorority, fraternity, or social aid and pleasure club, thank you. Your generosity helps fuel our collective efforts to create a just, vibrant, and sustainable region for all. As the president and the CEO of the Greater New Orleans Foundation, I invite you to deepen your relationship with your community foundation so that we can make an even larger impact in the local causes that you are passionate about. I hope you enjoy tonight's event. And so to kick off this year's celebration, we will have a special musical tribute to Ellis Marsalis by a younger generation of New Orleans musicians. Please welcome Wynton.
I actually had the opportunity to teach at Ellis Marsalis School of Music. Thank you, Mr. Marsalis, for your contribution to music, but more importantly, to the city of New Orleans. Seafood and gumbo, this Creole jungle, crabs in a barrel, grab and don't let go. Shout out my people, east to west we go, uptown, downtown, back of town, home of the Superdome, got us a Super Bowl. We reppin' black and gold, we let our colors show. I like 'em Creole, they so beautiful. I don't know what you be on, but I like 'em Nola grown. Ask me where I'm from, what I say back. New Orleans, New Orleans. When my city touch down, we say who that? New Orleans, New Orleans. Home of the saints and the sinners, born with the heart of a winner. Been around the world, but ain't nothing quite like New Orleans, New Orleans. 504, all I know, that's my city. We that chicken, we know how to party. Yeah, we get it started, talking Zulu ball, has sense and Mardi Gras. I know my people gon' feel it. We so resilient after disaster. We just rebuilding, you know we back and we better, able to storm any weather. We need to stop all the violence and just come together. Ask me where I'm from, what I say back. New Orleans, New Orleans. When my city touch down, we say who that? New Orleans, New Orleans. Home of the saints and the sinners, born with the heart of a winner. Been around the world, but ain't nothing quite like, yeah. Give me some jumping. in New Orleans. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Home of the saints and the sinners, born with the heart of a winner. Been around the world, but ain't nothing quite like New Orleans, New Orleans.
This evening's keynote speaker is no stranger to working in our communities as an advocate for positive change. Ashley Gardier is the Senior Advisor to the President and CEO and Director of All In Cities Initiative for Policy Link. Formerly, Ashley served as Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer at the New Orleans Business Alliance, Mayor Cantrell's economic development agency. She also previously led a citywide economic opportunity strategy as a Senior Advisor to former Mayor Mitch Landry. Ashley has been recognized by Living Cities as one of the nation's top 25 disruptive leaders, working to close racial opportunity gaps. She is an expert in economic and workforce development, organizational leadership and culture change, and large-scale systems transformation. I think you now know why we asked her to serve as our keynote speaker today. Please welcome my friend, Ashley Gardier.
I am so proud to participate in this year's Celebration of Black Philanthropy, honoring the life of Ellis Marcellus, who modeled the essence of philanthropy, giving his time, talent, and treasure to improve our community. Black Philanthropy Month, at its core, recognizes that the leadership of Black people in philanthropy matters. This year, Black Philanthropy Month and the 15th commemoration of Hurricane Katrina occur at the same time and remind us of the limitations of charity without addressing the entrenched structures that undergird racial inequity. Hurricane Katrina's destruction was so complete that it required New Orleans to reimagine and rebuild every single system essential to modern civilization. Out of necessity, we learned to address the immediate needs of family and community while planning for and building toward our aspirations for a future New Orleans that was better than the one we lost. Our region has been recognized nationally for its remarkable comeback. After 15 years of all-in engagement by residents, community groups, philanthropy, government, and business leaders, New Orleans did recover. But according to the racial equity data, our region did not transform. As in every other region in the nation, the racial wealth gap persists. The COVID crisis threatens New Orleans' future. And so, we find ourselves every few years responding to a new crisis, making new investments in new leaders, achieving limited results. New Orleans' post-Katrina recovery experience teaches practitioners, policymakers, and the field of philanthropy that even the most inclusive planning, the smartest program innovations, the most thoughtful policy reform and systems change efforts are no match for the nation's 400-year-old social, political, and economic structures. Leaders continue to invest their best thinking and action without recognizing that the structures that govern our democracy and our economy have been designed to exclude Black people and people of color and, as a result, limit the entire nation's progress. We employ race-neutral strategies, expecting to achieve racial equity, convinced that a rising tide lifts all boats. But we cannot transform places until we center people, and we cannot center people until we center race. And with this recognition, Black philanthropy offers key lessons for the broader field. 1. In order for philanthropy to become its best self, it must invest deeply in community power and community voice. Philanthropy must amplify the voices of those with lived experience and share power with those who have the voice, vision, and values necessary to solve our most intractable problems, rather than simply ensure that the problems get no worse. New Orleans cannot become her best self without fully leveraging the brilliance and creativity of all her residents. 2. Philanthropic investments must extend beyond funding programs to undoing the policies that create and maintain the racial wealth gap. Charity is an insufficient response to structural racism. Individual programs alone will not close the racial wealth gap, We cannot educate or build our way out of the deep inequities that constrain our democracy and economy. Instead, we must interrogate current policies across every system: healthcare, housing, education, economics, criminal justice, transportation, to determine whether Black people and people of color continue to suffer from exclusion or substandard access. 3. Black philanthropy has modeled the impact of generously doing more with less. Now, we challenge the broader field of philanthropy to do more with more. Pool resources across donor funds to have greater impact. Target investments to support strategies that repair harm and deliver equitable outcomes across racial groups. And beyond charity, use your power and your voice to redesign systems and demand that Black leaders and people of color be included in that redesign to ensure those systems serve rather than oppress. 4. Recognize the humanity of grassroots community leaders. Far more resources must be invested in the care of grassroots leaders, in sabbaticals, in retreats, in days off, in getaways with or without family. These investments, though often considered unnecessary, can make or break progress and affect whether the change we seek endures. One of the most frustrating realities of costly emergency response is that it proves that making equitable investments in core infrastructure was practical and financially feasible all along, if we truly wanted everyone in our region, in our nation, to be healthy and safe and to participate fully and succeed. As we celebrate Black philanthropy in 2020, let's promise ourselves that we will no longer simply provide charity in response to a new crisis in a new year. Instead, let's commit ourselves to confronting racial injustice once and for all, realizing true democracy and building an inclusive economy. That requires more than charity. It requires courageous and diverse leadership, the best of our time, our talent, and our treasure. Thank you.
My husband was struggling with going back. He didn't want to leave me and my daughter, and I'm also pregnant, so he didn't want to leave us, but he was also struggling with how does basketball matter right now when all of this is happening. I had just felt it on my heart, and I had been praying about it, and one night I just told him, I was like, well, if you go back, I don't think that you should take any money. I think we should give it all away.
Good evening. My name is Swin Cash, Vice President of Basketball Operations and Team Development for the New Orleans Pelicans. I'm humbled to be here this evening with you for your celebration of Black philanthropy. I'm here tonight to accept the award on behalf of Drew and Lauren Holiday from the Greater New Orleans Foundation. Drew and Lauren could not be here with you tonight, but I do want to just thank you for honoring both of them. Their commitment to the community has been outstanding. I've only been in New Orleans for a year so far, but I can tell you one thing. It's been amazing to watch how Drew and Lauren have committed not only their resources and time to our youth, but now taking it a step further. As many of you may have heard, when Drew made the decision to come back and play in the bubble when the NBA restart happened, him and Lauren made a huge announcement that they were both going to donate the rest of his salary to a fund, a social justice fund, that would be able to help fund Black-owned businesses, that would help fund some nonprofits, that will also help fund some HBCUs in specific areas. 1, here in New Orleans, 2, in Indiana, and 3, in Los Angeles. I'm super proud to have worked and been around Lauren and Drew for this last year or so. It's been amazing to watch them move as a family and as a unit and their commitment to not only their faith, but also to their community. So I'm so humbled to know that you guys would recognize them for this award. They are so deserving, and I am so happy to see that they are continuing the work even after the lights and the spotlights are gone from the season. I also want to thank and congratulate all the honorees from tonight. It's an amazing thing to give back to the community, especially those that are in such need. As this celebration of Black Philanthropy continues, please know that the Pelicans organization, under the leadership of Ms. Gail Benson, is committed to the communities around the greater New Orleans and throughout Louisiana. For most of you that may not know, recently the Pelicans and the Saints united to form a social justice leadership alliance, which Drew and some of his teammates, some of the Saints players, have been committed to. They have been committed to creating change. And that's why I'm super excited to see Drew and Lauren get this honor tonight, because they have been doing the work for a really long time and they continue to do just that. Thank you all for this amazing award for both Drew and Lauren. And I continue to say to each of us that are out there, to whom much is given, much is required. Let's continue the work. Thank you, God bless, and have a great evening.
Our first panel will take us through an enriching conversation about Black philanthropy in New Orleans over the years and the many ways African Americans have and continue to give generously to worthy causes. New Orleans is a city of great culture, rooted in relationships and affiliations. From our high schools to neighborhoods to civic organizations, New Orleanians pride themselves on their connections, their affiliations, and the impact they make through those organizations. To help us shine a light on the history and the present philanthropic investments of African Americans that rarely show up in traditional philanthropic dialogue, please help me welcome Greater New Orleans Foundation trustees and fund holders, Charles Rice, Monica McKay, and Jeanette Davis-Loeb. We're here to celebrate Black philanthropy in the great region of the Greater New Orleans area. So first, I guess the first question is, what's unique about Black philanthropy in your experience? Let's start with Charles.
Well, in your opening, you mentioned the affiliations of African Americans. And if you know a little bit about New Orleans history, the majority of the social organizations, the African American social organizations, were founded upon the principle of helping people in the city, people in the neighborhood, those less fortunate. So African Americans have always been a very giving people. We may not be giving millions of dollars, but we do give, and we have given the majority of our lives, and most of us have grown up giving in many different ways. And for me, you know, there are a variety of organizations that I support. I'm a member of a number of social organizations, Zulu, the Omega Psi Phi fraternity, the Boule, and through those organizations, we give to many different causes, primarily focused around African Americans and African American education, and also mentorship.
Great, thank you, Charles. You, Monica, what's unique about, in your perspective, about Black philanthropy from your experience?
I agree largely with Charles that Black philanthropists give to individuals and organizations that have typically been underfunded. And they use their funds to help amplify some of the organizations as well, bring it into the light and give other people who may be looking for an interest or somewhere to give their money some insight.
And Jeanette, you have a lot of experience in exactly what Monica's talking about as a fund holder, just like your two colleagues on the board. You're new to New Orleans, but your time as a philanthropist did not just start when you got to New Orleans. So what is unique in your experience about Black philanthropy, not just in our city, but across the country?
Well, I think if we consider the historical context of Black philanthropy, beginning with slavery, then all the way through Jim Crow, and then civil rights, and then to 2020, we've used our churches primarily as a way to take care of our community members, make sure that kids have food to eat, that there are opportunities for people to learn skills, and that someone has a suitcase full of clothing and a box of chicken or whatever they needed to go to college. And it's nothing new. I guess that's the thing. It's something that we grew up with. It's something my grandparents did, my father and my mother did, and something that my brothers do to this day. Whether it's coaching, whether it's mentoring, or whether it's providing someone with book money to go to school. It's something that we're used to doing and something that we really need to continue doing, especially right now.
Yeah. So we hear all the time about, when we hear generally about philanthropy, the names that we hear aren't generally African Americans in large numbers, right? because generally we in this country have placed a value on philanthropy based off of the amount of money that you give, right? And so you all have talked about a long history in the African American community of people giving the vast majority of their wealth and income away, right? And so I guess I'll start with you, Monica, on this question. Why is it important in this day and age for us to recognize Black philanthropy at all?
Largely for what you just said, because it's been given in non-traditional ways. It often goes unnoticed, I believe. And I think that the Greater New Orleans Foundation is in a position to help elevate and leverage the money that is given.
Right, Charles.
You know, it's you made an interesting point. Oftentimes, you know, philanthropy doesn't necessarily always involve money. It can involve your time. And a lot of African Americans give a lot of time to different organizations to support people who are underserved or people who are in need. So it's very, very important that not only that we give our dollars, but also that we give time. And with an organization like GNOF, just like Monica said, it can allow someone to amplify as well as leverage the dollars that they're giving to an organization or to a cause, or if they have a specific thing that they're supporting, you know, that allows you to do that. But one thing I also wanted to point out, and Ms. Lowe really made this point, you know, in our community, giving is expected. You're expected to give. It's just one of the things that you do. And nobody doesn't tell you, they don't tell you to do it. You just do it.
Yeah. And so, Jeanette, from your perspective, why is it important to even recognize Black philanthropy in all the forms that it comes in?
We talk a lot about time, talent, and treasure all the time, so much so that people take it for granted. But time is, I think, more important than treasure, for sure, as you were saying, Charles. And right now is a time for us, in my opinion, to double down on love. And that's something that we have so much of in the Black community that that we can share and that we can leverage. Instead of just showing up with a box of food, you show up with a box of food and a story. Instead of just handing out books at a book drive, you wrap the books up so that the babies have something special to open up, to unwrap. Like right now, those are my favorite things to do. To take a gift and then find a way to amplify it and to make it better and just to make it, I guess, a more precious gift. You want to make sure that the babies in this community have an opportunity to receive the best that we have, the best that we are. And I guess that's what I mean by doubling down on love. So I want to make sure that they feel like I'm loving them like they're my family.
Wow, doubling down on love. So this is the type of conversation that you know you always have. You have these moments where there's these jewels that come out, and this is one of them. And so I think that's a perfect segue to the next question. You know, you talked about this notion of doubling down on love. If we don't have anything else to give, we have love to give, and that is often accompanied by the service and the philanthropy that all of you've spoken about. Can you talk about your philanthropic giving, examples of the types of things that you've invested your time and your money and your resources in? And I think the bigger question is, to what you alluded to in the end, is how has your philanthropic giving changed in this particular moment and season that we're in as a country?
Okay, so I give 3 ways. I have 3 different vehicles for giving. I give personally, I give through my Greater New Orleans Foundation Donor Advised Fund, and then I give through my 501c3 Rising Oak Foundation. So Rising Oak Foundation is exclusively for Black boys, for supporting the holistic development of Black boys. And that is an homage to my father, my grandfather, and my brothers, who are amazing Black men who have loved me so well that I think I'm a queen, even to this day. And, well, probably when I was 5, I thought I was too. But that was because of their love and their nurturing. So that's Rising Oak. Greater New Orleans Foundation, what I get to do is organizations. Is it okay to mention a few?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Youth Renola, Live Oak Wilderness Camp, Ellis Marcellus Center, Louis Armstrong Summer Jazz Camp. That's just to name a few that I actually, I serve on their boards, I give money, I give time. And through those organizations, I'm able to provide scholarships for black boys and girls to go to summer camp, for young people to run in their communities and find safe places to run in their communities and help them to set up and establish healthy lifestyles with healthy eating habits. The Ellis Marcellus Center, I think I've donated one cello. You might as well give it to the kid who's going to play it, because I'm definitely not at this point.
Wow, cello.
So Rising Oak Foundation actually provides 3 to 5 brand new books for each one of the kids in the summer literacy program every year. So we've done that for 2 years, I think, now. And so my daughter and I literally gift wrap over 500 books every summer. And we're there to hand them out. And
so you're active in your
yes.
philanthropy. You show up
that's where the
when
joy
your investment comes. Yeah.
That's where it comes from.
How has your philanthropy changed in this moment that we're in as a country?
I've always been about providing exposure for kids and opportunities to learn and play music, because for me, I didn't grow up with a lot. My parents were teachers, and as my mom said, we were poor. We might not have been poor, but we were sure enough poor. We were poor. So if it wasn't for my library card and if it wasn't for my cello, I would have never imagined being who I am now and having the opportunities to get out in the world. So that's why providing exposure for kids is so important to me. But during this time, I want to make sure that babies in our community don't go to bed hungry. And we have to really worry about that right now. And a good friend of mine, through her foundation, Nucor, Von Fourier, she called me and a bunch of other people. She said, listen, I'm calling all my friends, and we're going to start this Families for Families. And I want all of you to, and Vaughn, I want each of you to give me $2,400 each for the year, and you can do it again next year. But we want to make sure that we can help families cover their rents and or their mortgages so they can keep roofs over the heads of their kids. I don't mean to be emotional about it, but people need to have that kind of security right now. And as Vaughn said, we cannot wait for our government to step in and take care of us. We've been doing it. We need to continue doing it. So this is like a time and a reminder for us to step up and take care of one another again, as we have done historically. We've been a little out of step, but it's time to get back in step again and continue to do the things that we know to do.
And pandemics and social unrest and moments of crisis have, for our communities, always been times for us to, double down on the type of investment and service and commitment that we make to our community. So you, Monica, what's some of your philanthropy look like as a Black philanthropist, and how has that changed or evolved in this moment that we're in?
I think that people, philanthropists in general, give to their interests. So my husband is very interested in education and always has been. So for his 50th birthday, I gifted him, with the help of many of his friends, a scholarship for Xavier students. I also enjoy PBS, and I give to them. I enjoy the Black documentaries that they have, the Gates documentaries. I enjoy the cooking shows. So I really do just try to give to my interests. As far as the pandemic, it's been a perfect confluence of circumstances that led to the perfect storm and lots of staying inside, like lots of it. So,
but I've seen you and your husband have had some epic moments on the porch with brass bands to celebrate as well.
Indeed, we did, but socially distanced.
That is right. That's just like we're doing right now.
It gave me an opportunity to do a lot of soul searching and be introspective, and I think that as a result, going forward, I'm going to be way more determined and pointed about the Black philanthropy that I want to do, the Black-led philanthropy, the Black organizations that are helping Black people locally.
Great. Charles?
I mean, for me, I agree with what Ms. Loeb said. It's really about exposure. So one of the organizations that I've actually given and raised a lot of money for is diversity in scouting. I was a Cub Scout, Weeblo, Boy Scout growing up, and I want to see a lot of our kids get that exposure. I give money also to United Way. I'm a Tocqueville Club member, and that's about, there's a lot of poverty in this community. So they help people, fight poverty, and also I'm a huge fan of HBCUs. I'm a graduate of one. My kids, my wife, my parents, my wife's parents. So we give to HBCUs, UNCF. There are a lot of different organizations. I've even given to PBS also because I enjoy those African American programs. So for me, at the end of the day, one, it's about helping, for me, African Americans who were not as fortunate as I was, and both of my parents were educators also. I was exposed to some things, but for me, it's about giving kids an opportunity that they normally would not have, but for someone being generous. And at the end of the day, I wrote a paper my last year in law school, The Decline of Black Society Since Integration. And one of the major issues that I think we have as a society, and I'm talking African Americans, is, during segregation, believe it or not, Black achievement was a lot higher than it is now. And part of the reason was we all lived in the same neighborhood. The Black doctor lived in the same neighborhood with the carpenter. So the kid who was the son of the carpenter could see the Black doctor or the Black lawyer and aspire to be that person. So it's ultimately, at the end of the day, it's about exposure. And, one of the things we didn't mention, a lot of the African-American organizations where, I'll use Jack and Jill's example, where mothers are with their kids, they make those kids give, and they make those kids give their time. So again, it's something that we've always done, and we will continue to do. It's just hopefully as we become more prosperous, we decide to give even more.
So let me ask y'all something. You all have talked at great length and detail about what undergirds Black culture and what is behind our investment and our service, right? What we give of ourselves to our people and our communities. And as Monica said so eloquently, like all philanthropies, Black philanthropies are the same. It's about giving to your interests, right? Speak to, if you'd like, this moment that we're in as a country of social unrest. Tonight, we are going to make a really awesome announcement about ways for this foundation to step up, put our hand on the scale, and to help move the needle on racial equity in our region and in the country. Speak to your own experience in this moment. Has there been anything that has stood out to you as Black philanthropists should be thinking about in terms of your own giving and your service that can be instructive for this moment of particularly social justice and unrest that we're in as a country? So I'll start with you, Charles.
I would say there are organizations out there that we, and when I say we, I mean African Americans as a people, we don't necessarily focus on. I would say the ACLU is an example. And my youngest son actually gives to the ACLU. And the boy he just graduated from college, but he's been giving to the ACLU because he likes their mission.
He's an alpha
yes,
man,
he
right?
is alpha man.
Yeah,
that is correct.
Awesome.
That's
Great man. Great man.
But he, that's something that he likes their mission, and I think that may be an organization that maybe we should consider because they are looking out for the rights of people. Although you may not like all of their positions, but at the end of the day, they're trying to do what's right for everyone, and really, not that the government always needs to be in check, maybe a little more now than ever, but they're looking out for everyone. So that may be an organization we should consider. We need to consider looking at organizations that are out there fighting for the rights of everyone, not necessarily just African Americans, but everyone, because at the end of the day, we all live in the same country. We all want it to be a better place. And the best way to do that is for everyone to get together, line up, and hopefully march to the beat of the same drummer.
So Jeanette, you have any thoughts about that question about how what potentially should Black philanthropists be thinking about differently or new in this moment that we're in as a country?
I would say locally that they should thinking about looking into the Greater New Orleans Foundation and what we actually have going on there. And for a lot of people to realize that there are a lot of programs that we offer to help all nonprofits here take their organizations to the next level. And I think it's really important that people take their seat at the table so that their point of views and their perspectives can be heard, addressed, and met. And there's enough room. We have space. We have a big building, okay? And we have a lot of love in that building, as a matter of fact, as well as quite a few motivated and giving people who work there, as you well know.
That's right.
Please come join us.
Thanks for giving our team a shout out for that. I think that's a great segue to this question, same question, right? To the two of you. Why should African American philanthropists in our region look to partner with their local community foundation?
They should do that, especially a community foundation like the Greater New Orleans Foundation, because they will be amplified and they'll get a broader audience to see their work and to learn about how they are affecting the community.
Absolutely. Charles?
Not only a broader audience, but there are a lot of organizations out there. And you only have so much time in the day, and you can't know every organization that is out there doing good work. And working with someone like Ganoff, you may get exposed to an organization you've never heard of that is doing tremendous work in the community. And you may not have heard of them because they don't have the resources to publicize what they're doing, but they know Ganoff knows about them. Ganoff has given them money before. Ganoff has already done the due diligence on that organization and Ganoff can verify and certify that the organization is legitimate. So you have a greater level of comfort given to an organization that you may not have ever heard of that's doing great work in this community.
Y'all, this has been a really, really, really rich and rewarding conversation. Thank you for not only your service to our community as board members and funders at the Great New Orleans Foundation, but thank you for sharing your insights today. You know, this stuff makes no impact if we don't get an opportunity to see Black philanthropists and civic leaders who are not only talking the talk, but walking the walk, and each one of you are doing that. So thank you all for joining us for another Celebration of Black Philanthropy.
Pleasure.
And now, please welcome Greater New Orleans Foundation Board Chair, Leanne Moses.
Wow, what an amazing discussion on Black philanthropic giving in Southeast Louisiana. I am honored to serve alongside many great civic leaders as members of Ganoff's Board of Trustees. And that last panel highlighted some of our finest. Thanks again, Monica, Jeanette, and Charles, for sharing your own stories of Black philanthropy in our community and how the events of this past year have given you even more purpose. Much has been said throughout the night's program about this incredible time we find ourselves in as a country. The racial disparities in the impact of COVID-19, recent shootings of Black men and women by police, social unrest, and the subsequent cries for justice has made our foundation think about what more we could do to help heal the wounds that continue to separate us and to truly create a vibrant, sustainable, and just region for all. I am proud of the work of Ganoff over the past few years to increase diversity on our board and team. I am proud of our work as a vocal civic leader on matters that address underlying systemic injustices that have held back the aspirations, promise, and progress for too many people of color in our region. And I am proud to share that over the last 5 years, more than 85% of our discretionary grant making has supported Black communities, and 1/3 of our grants have gone to Black-led organizations. We are proud of recent efforts like those of Drew and Lauren Holliday, my fellow board members that you heard from, and so many more. This moment is challenging us to think hard about how we can do so much more. We had 2 simple rules. First, do more than offer lip service in the form of a statement. Thoughts and prayers are important, but action is what is required. And second, figure out a way to deliver real impact. GNOF is Southeast Louisiana's community foundation, and our principal role is to be the place for strategic philanthropy that builds the capacity of our local nonprofits so they can make impact. That is why I am proud to announce that the Greater New Orleans Foundation is starting the Greater Together Fund for Racial Equity. This new $3 million fund that we will raise is being seeded by an initial investment of $350,000 from GNOF. And the funds raised will be used to invest in nonprofits that are leading on racial equity. The Greater New Orleans Foundation's Greater Together Fund for Racial Equity will, 1, provide leadership in ending institutional racism, engaging speakers and using our convening powers to host conversations and advance dialogue promoting systems change in our region. 2, it will bolster the work of Black-led nonprofits leading on racial equity, making investments to sustain the work of local nonprofits that are having an impact in eliminating inequitable systems. And 3, it will close the racial wealth gap by investing in initiatives to help small minority businesses grow their share of gross receipts in our region from a mere 2% to create meaningful prosperity, as well as investing in housing and other strategies that can build wealth for Black families. The fund will make large, sustained investments in a small number of nonprofits whose work has scalable, local, regional, and even statewide impact. In addition, the Racial Equity Fund will provide critical sustaining support to nonprofits working tirelessly on the community level. Delivering progress on these tough issues and bringing our community together to develop a vibrant, sustainable, and just region for all is what the Greater New Orleans Foundation is in the business to do. We believe the new Greater Together Fund for Racial Equity will help us get closer to our mission. We are grateful to all of you who will join us in this effort.
What an exciting announcement about the Greater New Orleans Foundation's Greater Together Fund for Racial Equity. To continue our program and have an amazing conversation about racial equity funding that's happening locally and across the country by great community foundations. I'm excited to kick off our second panel conversation with a conversation of 3 amazing women leaders in philanthropy. We have Carmen James Randolph, the Greater New Orleans Foundation's Vice President of Programs. We have the President and CEO of the Miami Foundation, Rebecca Lipsey, and we have Shonda Smith-Baker. She's the Senior Vice President of Impact at the Minneapolis Foundation. Ladies, it's so great to be with you all. Thank you for joining us. So today, there's been a lot of conversation in our country about strategic philanthropy and what that really means. So my first question, we'll start off with Carmen, is how has the role of foundations evolved as a change agent to address inequities in this country?
Thank you for having me, and thank you all for joining us. I would say that philanthropy has been viewed as an act of charity or as an act of generosity. However, it is definitely an act of power. And I think at this moment in time, foundations are taking an internal look and looking at the role that they play in the power dynamic with the community. And this is causing foundations to look internally at their own practices in terms of staffing, board, leadership, as well as their own practices in terms of philanthropy, how to shift power and how we are actually doing grant making. And it recognizes the potential of philanthropy to catalyze movements, to mobilize people, and to support the hard work that is happening on the ground in this fight for racial justice and equity. So it's an exciting moment, but it requires incredible shifts for what has been called legacy charities across the country.
Thank you for that, Carmen. Carmen's telling us it's a moment of shifting in philanthropy. Rebecca, what's your take?
I completely echo what you just shared. Philanthropy is an act of power. It's an act of validating the issues that matter most to the future of our communities. It is identifying leaders who are solving issues that matter to our communities and lifting them and giving them momentum and validation and support and standing with them. And it's very inspiring to hear how similar what you are seeing in the shift in philanthropy is in your community. I see a very similar shift in our own community. This work is not just about where we give, it's about who we are and us reflecting internally, pushing ourselves to make sure that we are equitable in all of our practices as well. And I'm seeing that shift, not just in the philanthropic industry, but really in every industry across our country right now.
Great, thank you so much for that. Shonda, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to kind of jump in after those two great comments, but I would say that, I love this idea of it being an act of courage and that it's not just where we give, but it's also where we lead. And I think that all of our institutions are being called to lead differently. And as Carmen pointed out, in order for us to do that means that it has to include self-reflection, it has to include voter actions, it has to include voices that haven't been at the table historically. It demands something different for us to be able to achieve what we're looking to achieve, hopefully collectively, a community that is leaderful, that is directed towards justice and equity. And I think we're in a reckoning period, and philanthropy is part of that. I have benefited as a former nonprofit leader from the great investments of philanthropy, so I don't want to discount it, but it is a moment for us to really dig deep and figure out how we want to position for tomorrow.
Awesome. So this is a moment of shifting. This is it's a new moment that's calling us to do things very differently. As you heard before in the program and me allude to at the opening of this discussion, today the Greater New Orleans Foundation announced a new $3 million fund for racial equity. That is unprecedented for our foundation. I'm here sitting with our Vice President of Programs, who's responsible for Ganoff's investments of all of our grant making as an organization, and she always talks about the need for more discretionary funding and to make these types of investments. And so this for us is a game changer as an organization. So I'm going to kick it off to Carmen one more time to start this, to just give a sense of why this fund here in the city and for the parish of Greater New Orleans. And then I want to talk to you, Shonda and Rebecca, about the work that you're doing at your community foundations that's similar. Carmen?
Well, the Greater Together Fund for Racial Equity gives the Greater New Orleans Foundation a tremendous opportunity to live into our mission, to make this a vibrant, sustainable, and just community for everyone. And we realize that for years, decades, even centuries, this has not been a just community for everyone. And the Fund for Racial Equity gives us an opportunity to do several things. And I think as a community foundation, we have a responsibility to engage our donors, to educate our donors, and this work requires the changing of hearts and minds. So a part of this Fund for Equity is to actually conduct education and learning through speakers and conversations and what have you, but also to make very strategic investments at the root causes of where we are seeing the greatest level of injustice, and nonprofits who have been working tirelessly on the front lines, those who are proven, who have the opportunity to make scalable and impactful change in our community, as well as those who are at the community level and working with Black communities who deal with injustice on a range of different levels. So we're very excited for this opportunity to invest in Black leadership. We know from our own nonprofit survey and study, looking at what leadership and the health of nonprofits are in our community, that often leaders of color, Black and Indigenous leaders of color, have traditionally done so much more with so little. They have been traditionally under-resourced, and this is an opportunity for us to level set. And to do that, it requires us to stretch. It requires us to engage multiple donors, to engage and educate those donors, as well as make those strategic investments.
Thank you, Carmen. Carmen talked about this being a different type of philanthropy and investment for the greater New Orleans region. Shonda, can you talk about the racial equity funding and initiatives that you all are leading in Minneapolis?
Yeah, I'm happy to. And I want to just congratulate you all in New Orleans for the work and establishment of that fund. I want to say that as I was listening to Carmen speak, I thought that beyond the resource, because I think the resource is a good start, it's a declaration. It is an acknowledgement that we have not been as intentional as we need to be in philanthropy in terms of lifting up Black leadership and efforts that are informed by our communities, and that it's a commitment. And I imagine that commitment towards equity is fueled by the fund, but threaded throughout other efforts, as it is in Minnesota. I'm from Minneapolis, at the Minneapolis Foundation, sitting in the throes of the aftermath of George Floyd. And this was a conversation that was happening. We were making efforts at the Minneapolis Foundation to move forward with funds that supported communities of color and Indigenous communities in new, stronger, more focused ways. But with the unrest that we have seen, we have fast-tracked, and I'm part of 3 leaders that came together to start a fund with the intention of raising $25 million. We've got a ways to go.
Wow.
That we're calling the Combating Anti-Blackness and Realizing Justice Fund, that is centering Black leadership. It has been fantastic. We've engaged about 40 foundations across our greater Minnesota area to talk to them about how are they centering, regardless of the diversity of where they're leading, how can their leadership lean in this moment. At the Minneapolis Foundation, we started a fund, our One Minneapolis Fund, to look at how can we be agile and nimble and responsive to the needs of the communities while focusing on, again, race, combating racism, addressing systems of oppression, and advancing equity and inclusion. And so I'm really proud of the work. It is both the heavy time that is full of lots of inspiration, and I hope that the fund there in New Orleans has inspired, and has validated the work of so many, and allow us to get the energy needed to kind of continue the work that's required.
Shonda, I really appreciate that you echoing a point that I've heard Carmen in Greater New Orleans area talk about a lot, which is that this fund is not just to invest in necessarily new things, or this is about new efforts we want to see go forward, but this is about lifting up and investing in existing efforts that for too long hasn't been focused on or hasn't been prioritized. And so I'm happy to hear a similar effort with y'all's fund. I'm actually blown away by that $25 million number that you have. So Rebecca, you lead the Miami Foundation, and I got to tell you that I've been blown away by a lot of the work that you all have been doing there, and especially with your new efforts as well. You guys came out of the gate fast. It was compelling, it was strong, and I think what is also pretty interesting is people don't know you haven't been on the job that long as the CEO of the Miami Foundation, a very long time. So you came out of the gate swinging. Tell us a little bit about your efforts.
Thank you. Well, it's very kind of you to compliment me. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I'm not being bold enough. Look at you and look at what you're doing. So you're raising the bar for me, both of you, and it's very inspiring. I will say, it's meaningful to hear you praise how quickly we came out of the gate. That was my first day on the job when we announced our commitment, our declaration, as you would have put it a minute ago. And then we launched this fund, and we launched it because our community is grieving. They are grieving and processing a long history of inequity across our country and systems that reinforce racial inequities that pervade to this day, and they're grieving actively. And the organizations that have been doing the work for decades to fight against racism, they see increased momentum in this moment. And we needed to not wait until we had a perfect solution. We needed to stand with them right away, infuse resources for them right away so that they can, first of all, they see increased need, but also so that we could give them wind on their backs while they see so much momentum. And so we launched a fund. We hoped that the community would stand with us and multiply our efforts. They have tripled the size of our fund so far, but it doesn't touch what you all are doing yet. So you're setting the bar for me. I hope we reach the $3 million mark and top it, but we're not there yet. But I'll say this, my challenge as we launch what we did is I think it's very important for us to make a statement and create a fund that's focused on fighting racism in all of its forms and specifically addressing system level racism. But what we need to do is not pat ourselves on the back and say, great, we have a fund for that over there in the corner. Everything else that we do needs to be business as usual. This fund for us was a good punch in the gut to say we need to reflect on all of our funds and the way that we invest and who we trust and who we respect with our dollars and who we suspect. And to see where we are over-investing in solutions and who we are not investing enough in. And I think for a long time, we philanthropically have over-invested in white-led organizations that are doing incredible work to strengthen communities and have not sufficiently invested in communities that are solving their issues from within their own communities with lived experience. I think we honor a lot of kind of external validation and relationships and history of performance, and we undervalue lived experience. And so it's been a really important process for us to reflect not just on how we do right with this fund, but how we do right with all of our funds.
Wow, that was a lot you said, and I think it was really, really impactful and heartfelt as well. Let me stick with you, Rebecca, in this next question, which is, so all three of the foundations that we're spotlighting today talked about obviously impact, right? How do you see the community strengthened, and what does success look like due to the investments that the Miami Foundation and your partners will make through your funds and your investments around racial equity?
So this process is changing us. It's changing the way that we give. It's changing the way our partners give. And my hope is that it will give wind in the backs of a lot of organizations that are at the front lines of our community fighting racism. But I want to be real that we are not going to solve for hundreds of years of injustice with a couple $1 million. We're not. And that when I ask myself the tough question of what does success look like, I mean, we are trying to address system level issues. And so what success looks like is that the color of your skin does not dictate your health outcomes. It does not dictate your educational outcomes. It does not dictate your job outcomes. We're looking for system level change, and it's going to take far more than a small fund on the side on our end. It's going to take a true revolutionary change from within and partnerships from all across our region, across every single sector, committing and saying, we care about this, we value this, we're going to stand by our values, we're going to lead differently. So it's not a perfect answer to your question, but it's the best I got today.
Well, look, I think it's a bold answer and it's aspirational. Not often do you hear folks talk about the need for system level change, right? Those are things that are been undergirded for a long time. And so if that's what success looks like in Miami after these types of investments and this work, why don't we go to Carmen? Why don't you talk a little bit about what success looks like in New Orleans after the investments of our fund?
Well, first I want to just echo the comments so far. I couldn't agree with you more that when we reach a point where system level change is happening, when we can reimagine systems in a way that help Black people thrive, The point is, by doing so, we help our whole entire community thrive. And I think that addressing these issues at the system level is critical. But I also believe that in terms of success in this regard, we have to be clear to engage the communities that we're seeking to support and asking them what would success look like for you, because success might have a different characteristic. I remember years ago, I funded a nonprofit that set as one of its highest goals, one of its top goals, that they would not lose one Black boy to violence, that no one would die in their program. And I remember that funders who were sitting around the table deciding on that particular proposal felt like that was a reach. And I had to ask them, have you been in this community? Have you walked through this community? Do you know what it would mean for a mother not to lose a son? So what communities set as success for them, we in philanthropy have to accept that and embrace it and understand that those successes are important for all of us to thrive.
Wow. Before I joined the foundation, Carmen, I think you remember, I worked for the former mayor, Mitch Landrieu, and had a number of roles, but one of them was to help lead our murder reduction strategy in the city of New Orleans. And it, by far, of all the things I did, was obviously by far the most rewarding experience. So lifting up, I think, those really aspirational, ambitious goals that, one, while they're bold, they really speak to, real challenges that people in communities have been facing for a long period of time. And for you as a funder, a long-time funder of programs and nonprofit work, to acknowledge, right, that while that may be different, that is nonetheless the types of things that we need to be focused on. So thanks for lifting it up. I'll start with you, Carmen, on this question. If there was one thing you wish people appreciated about the needs and the challenges funding racial equity work across the country, what would it be?
I think to the point that we cannot solve for hundreds of years of injustice in a short period of time, I think the one thing that is important for all of us to embrace is that we have to be in this work for the long haul. This shouldn't be just the flavor of the month. This shouldn't just be the priority of philanthropy today, and then we change in another year or 3 years, or look at these initiatives with a lifespan. That truly this work, we have to be in it for the long haul.
Great, thanks so much. Why don't we go to you with this question? I'll give you a twofer. The first part of the question is really around, what does success look like in Minneapolis after the investments and the work of your new fund and your partners and in the programs that you lead? And then I think the second part of that question, if you can also touch on, if there was one thing that you wish others would appreciate about the challenges and the needs of funding racial equity work in the country, what would it be? That was a mouthful.
Yeah, it was. Let me, thank you, and I apologize. I had to run and get a new device, so I'm trying to figure it out in real time. But I think that, for me, part of what success looks like is actually embracing the challenges and complexity that exist within achieving equity, and that sometimes we oversimplify, or we think that if we had a logic model, we would be able to achieve it in a quick manner and without kind of the deeper work that it requires us. This is not an external exercise. It's an internal exercise that produces results externally. And so that would be the one thing, is just to really embrace the complexities. Don't try to simplify it. Don't try to shy away from it, and recognize how long it took us to get here, and that operating with urgency is important. But you cannot do that if you're not informed and if you're not close enough to the issues. I think success to me would look to me like a validation from our communities and from our leaders that they feel seen, they feel heard, their ideas are being recognized and supported, and that that we're able to be in conversations that are more honest and driven not by self-interest but by collective interest and opportunity.
Wow, thank you so much for that. We'll go to you, Rebecca. Same question that was posed to Carmen. What is one thing that you wish people better appreciated about the needs and challenges for funding racial equity work across the country?
I love what Carmen shared. I will say, like, this is brave work. This is a long game, and this is an inside job. I've seen a lot of people in this moment as they see what's going on in the community and they seek to take action. I've seen a lot of statements, a lot of people doing outside work to show their commitment, and that's a great step. But I think the hard work here is the inside work. It's the uncomfortable conversations. It's a long game. And for us not to feel satisfied in big, bold, visible outside steps that we take, but rather to really take our time to do this right, to allow full changes for our whole selves, and also to spend time calling each other in for brave, real conversations, because I agree with what you said before. Like, this is about standing with communities right now to heal from hundreds of years of pain. And it deserves from us that bravery, and it deserves the inside work of a long game. Great.
So we're at our last question, and this one I think is probably most meaningful for a lot of our audience. This is our Celebration of Black Philanthropy, and a lot of the people that's tuning into this and that participated in years past are Black philanthropists in the greater New Orleans region, and this whole program is designed to speak to them about not only to celebrate the past and their work to make real impact in our communities, but to help and encourage them with new resources, new ways, and new ideas about how to make better investments and more impact. So I guess the last question really is, what can philanthropists, whether it's Black philanthropists, white philanthropists, Asian, or other philanthropists, do to strengthen the work of community foundations to really get fully on board and be game changers in this work for racial equity in all of our communities? So we'll start off with Shonda.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the first thing that came to mind is to be in the work with us. To realize that, you know, we started out talking about the wonderful $3 million fund, the need to have resources that are undesignated, unrestricted, for us to make smart investments where they're needed. I do think that looking at how power is needing to shift and giving those of us that are working in philanthropy in relationship with community, you know, supporting those resources and how they get invested. It's very difficult to evaluate impact with an old lens and ones that is not focused on the type of work that we're trying to get done now. So come into the arena with us, give us flexible use of funds, and let's evolve in terms of how we see impact and be dogged about the goal of equity, inclusion, and justice.
Thank you so much. I'll go to Carmen.
I agree with Shonda 150%. Join us. Join us. Join us. Be a part of this work. I believe that one of the best things that other philanthropists can do is join us in laying down this flag, that this is an important issue for all of us to work on together, and that collectively, I think we can realize the power to make real change happen in community. So that is the biggest thing that I think that we could put a call out to other philanthropists and donors to do. And it is joining with us to learn and to engage and to change and to rethink who we trust, how we make investments, how we stand up leadership, and how we follow as well as lead.
Wow. Thank you so much, Carmen. And now to close us out on this great panel,
is Miami Foundation CEO. Rebecca.
Completely agree with what you just shared. As you were asking that question, I was scribbling down one word. I wrote down together. This is a moment where we need to be standing with each other. And I think it's so valuable to see how many people in all of our communities are saying, I care about this and I will give to this. But it's really important in this moment for us not to be individually trying to solve a system level, community level issue. We need to join with each other, give with each other. And this is what community foundations were designed to do, to bring people together to solve issues that they could not solve alone, to bring together elected leadership power and nonprofit power and philanthropic power together to say, this is something that matters to the future of our community. We're going to stand together and we're going to solve it.
Well, thank you so much. And thank all three of you for participating in this invaluable conversation. One of my great colleagues in philanthropy and communications, Matt Beatty, who leads communications at the Miami Foundation, Rebecca, and Matt and I generally will always try to figure out the most creative way to make announcements. And generally they include press releases and a whole bunch of stuff. But what we really wanted in terms of making this announcement about the Greater Together Fund for Racial Equity in the Greater New Orleans region was to help tell a larger story and to give context for this new fund and this investment. And all three of you shared great insight. I think we all left. I definitely learned a lot. I think our audience is going to learn a lot from this conversation. And it's going to help not only the Greater New Orleans region, but we hope community foundations and communities all across this country go deeper into this work of racial equity. So thank you all three of you and all of your foundations and your boards for your leadership. And we look forward to partnering with you again in the future. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
I think that's it, y'all. Thank y'all so much.
This was great.
This was beautiful.
Yeah. I'm so inspired by both of you.
I'm inspired by all three of y'all. How do you think I feel?
$25 million.
Well, we did not come out the gate with that, but I'll tell you the number by itself has people, we're right at about 3 million with another 3 kind of committed coming in based on stuff. We may hit it, we may not, but we were bold with it.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Inspired me so much out here. So thank you for inviting me to this.
Thank you all very much. And we hope we can connect with you all again soon.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Shonda.
Please welcome Vice President of Development and Donor Relations, Erin McQuaid Wright.
What an amazing evening. I have the honor of leading our development and donor relations team at the Greater New Orleans Foundation, which is responsible for building and maintaining relationships with donors, fund holders, and partners just like you. We take that responsibility seriously, which is why we created Louisiana's first celebration of Black philanthropy to lift up what you and so many African American philanthropists and leaders are already doing to improve our city and our region. Thank you for the unique ways in which each of you are giving back. Earlier this evening, you heard about ways the Greater New Orleans Foundation is partnering with donors to invest in the areas that spark their passion. You also heard about our exciting new Greater Together Fund for Racial Equity. Whether you're interested in having your own donor-advised fund, joining our Impact 100 Women's Giving Circle, leaving a legacy for organizations and causes that you care about, or donating to our new Greater Together Fund, our team of experts are ready to make it an easy, smooth process where you get to experience the joy of giving. My full development and donor relations team is ready to begin or grow our relationship with you. Just give us a call or email to the information on your screen. I'm confident that we can do even greater work together. Now, to conclude this year's celebration of Black philanthropy, welcome back to the stage, the Brassaholics.